One breath of a forbidden perfume makes a mafia boss shut down his own nightclub. By sunrise, the woman wearing it holds the key to his father's murder and to his empire. Kimberly Zamora entered El Mirador through the staff door at 4:46 p.m., precisely 14 minutes before the velvet rope lifted. In the locker nook, she reached for the pouch she swore she wouldn't open again. She clocked in through the side door of El Mirador at 4:46 p.m., 14 minutes before the VIP floor opened to the moneyed and the bored. She wore the maroon overcoat she refused to pawn and the practical black dress-coded bottle service, in a place where bottles cost more than her mother's monthly meds. In the prep alcove, she twisted her hair smooth, slid her locker open, and lifted the velvet pouch she'd promised herself she wouldn't touch again. Inside lay the last clean piece of her life. A crystal atomizer, etched with a night-blooming flower, nocturne. Her grandmother's myth. Dusky violet, black tea, burnt orange peel. The scent that never announced itself so much as arrive, like the opening note of a song you didn't know you knew. Don't be sentimental, she told the mirror. Be molecular. Then she broke her own rule. One whisper on the wrists, one at the hollow of the throat. Temperature stabilized the base. Body heat coaxed the heart. Chemistry obeyed, even when everything else didn't. The club unfurled around her as the staff finished polishing glass and hyper-cleaning sins from last night's corners. Chandeliers gathered warm light into lakes on the ceiling. Past the main floor, the owner's corner table, more throne than furniture, waited with its view of the bay and the door. She had seen Miguel M. Arroyo twice. Once at a charity gala, when he'd smiled like a storm was nothing. Once in her nightmares, as a silhouette stitched out of rumors. Tonight he arrived just after 7, in a sky-blue suit knifed to his shoulders, with a white shirt open at the throat and a chain that wasn't for show. Kimberly worked her section by muscle memory. 2 magnums to the bachelorette, a bottle to the tech founders arguing returns like religion, a tray of flutes to a debutante who'd turned 21 30 minutes ago. When she crossed near the owner's table, the air itself changed. Miguel's hand stilled on the stem of his glass. His eyes closed, not in prayer, not in pleasure, but in recognition so complete it cleared his face of everything else. He inhaled once. His voice was soft, threaded steel. Everyone. Out. Music cut mid-beat. Security flowed like a tide to the exits. The sea of bodies, glittering and loud seconds ago, became a hush moving in one direction. The double doors sealed with a patient thud. The city outside blinked and kept going. Kimberly didn't run because running meant guilt, and guilt meant questions, and questions meant her mother's name on forms that could be used to hurt her. She held her tray at parade rest and felt her pulse annotate the perfume at her throat. Miguel opened his eyes. Leave the tray. Stay. I'm staff, Sifit said, crisp as a receipt. And you're wearing a ghost, he answered. Where did you get Nocturne? No one should have known that name. The room tilted. Family, she said. It came out like a lie because, lately, anything about family did. Good, he said. He rose, tall enough to change the room's geometry. Then maybe you can tell me why my father died with this scent in the air. He started toward the back corridors. He didn't look to see if she followed. He didn't need to. Kimberly set the tray down and went after him, her coat whispering against her legs, the perfume writing a future she hadn't agreed to in the air between them. If you're hooked in and you're ready to enjoy this story, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Because tomorrow, I will be giving you another story just as interesting as this one, and you don't want to miss it. Now, back to the story. The corridors behind El Mirador's main floor were colder than Kimberly expected, sleek, industrial, lined with mirrored panels that reflected too much and revealed nothing. Miguel moved ahead of her, quiet as heat lightning, never looking back to check if she followed. He didn't need to. Her heart hadn't slowed since he'd said the words, "Why my father died with that scent in the air." Miguel stopped before a steel door disguised as a mirrored column. He touched his palm to a panel. A quiet hiss followed, and the door unsealed itself like a vault, remembering how to breathe. Inside, a private office lit only by violet-toned sconces, and the hum of equipment built into the walls. A UV wand rested on the edge of a glass desk, its cord neatly coiled like a sleeping serpent. "Your wrist," he said, already lifting the wand. Kimberly hesitated. Her skin was still warm where she'd applied the perfume Nocturna 13, 3 spritzes, one for memory, one for armor, one for nothing she could name. She held out her arm. Miguel moved the wand in a slow pass over her skin. The reaction was instant. The oil base bloomed to life under the ultraviolet light. Letters and numbers curled out of the scent, like code crawling across a screen. 25774, I'm sorry. Then, a schematic unfolded. Not just a symbol, a flower, 8-petaled, star-shaped. The center pulsed in faint UV-reactive ink, as if it were timed to a countdown only the skin could keep. Kimberly's mouth went dry. "That's downtown," she said automatically, parsing the coordinates. "South Beach perimeter. More exact than that," Miguel said. "That's this building." He set the wand down with a precision that felt rehearsed. "My father renovated El Mirador in 2003. What no one knows is that the club was built over a wine vault that predates it by 70 years, hidden during Prohibition, reinforced during the Mariel crisis. Only 2 people knew the entrance existed, Don Arroyo and me." He nodded toward her wrist. "Your grandmother knew too." A beat passed. Kimberly swallowed. She tried to speak, but it wasn't words that came. It was memory. She was 9 the first time they moved overnight. No suitcases, no goodbyes. Just a post-it on the fridge in handwriting too neat to be her mother's. "Don't wait, go now, C7 has you." From New Orleans to Boise to Amarillo to the outskirts of DC, every year a new school, a new alias. She grew up in libraries and laundromats, whispering chemical names like prayers. Organic chemistry was the only language that stayed the same. The perfume came later. On her 16th birthday, an unmarked envelope arrived at a motel in Sarasota. Inside, a scholarship certificate and a debit card with just enough to cover her first semester's housing deposit. She never found out who paid the rest. She only knew the card's routing number linked back to a bank in Coral Gables. Zamora women didn't get lucky. They got warned. "Your grandmother was never subtle," Miguel said, interrupting her thoughts. "But she was smart. This formula, Nocturna 13, was a message. She encoded location data in the oil matrix." "I didn't know," Kimberly whispered. "I mean, I knew she was brilliant. I knew she did work for clients that weren't exactly legal. But I didn't know she was leaving me instructions." Miguel studied her face. His expression was unreadable, but something in his posture shifted, a realization or a regret. Before either of them could speak again, his earpiece crackled to life. "Inez to Mirador 1. We've got eyes on 4 marked units approaching from the south, all responding to a noise complaint. Formation's too clean, too fast. This isn't organic." Miguel's jaw locked. "Clock?" "Less than 6 minutes before they hit the outer perimeter. Your window's closing." He turned to Kimberly. "We go now." He reached for a communicator. Luca assigned 2 shadows to... "No," Kimberly said. Miguel looked at her. "I'm not baggage," she said evenly. "You don't assign me handlers. I walk beside you." Something in his face softened, just enough to be dangerous. And not flirtation, respect. "Fine," he said. "But stay close. There are people in this building who want that formula more than they want to breathe." They moved quickly through a hallway that felt narrower than before, lights dimming behind them, echoes chasing their footsteps. Kimberly's heels clicked softly against the polished floor, the only sound besides the distant thrum of bass that hadn't quite died from the main floor. As they descended a back stairwell, a low ping echoed in Miguel's comm unit. Not Inez, not Luca. A new voice. Digitized, masked. "Bring the flower to the root." A pause. "Oh, too seen." Miguel stopped. The silence stretched. "Who the hell has this frequency?" he muttered. Kimberly's blood turned to ice. "They're talking about me." Miguel turned to her, gaze sharp. "We're not alone," she said. Just before the lights flickered, once, twice, and a silent alarm lit up red on the panel beside the stairwell. Someone else had breached the lower level. Someone else was heading toward the vault. Miguel's comm lit up again, this time with a voice he recognized too well. "Mirador 1. This is Silvio." Front entrance. Miami-Dade just landed. I'm handling it. Miguel tapped the earpiece. Define handling. Routine sweep. They're citing a noise complaint. Unmarked units, but friendly. We'll keep them outside. His tone was all silk and open hands. Miguel knew that tone. Silvio Calderon only sounded like that when he was lying. He looked to Kimberly. Her face was unreadable, but she was listening, tracking every word. He stepped out to a panel embedded in the wall. A feed of the front entrance bloomed across the mirrored glass. 2 cruisers, 4 officers, and Silvio in a dove-gray suit, shaking hands with one of the patrol sergeants like he'd been expecting them. He hadn't been in the club 10 minutes ago. Where had he come from? Too fast, Miguel muttered. He's been waiting for this. Kimberly spoke quietly beside him. What does he want? Miguel didn't answer, not yet. On the other side of the mirrored corridor, Kimberly slipped her phone from the back of her boot where she'd tucked it mid-shift. 1 bar, maybe 2. She turned her back to the camera feed and tapped the emergency contact. Monica, her mother's nurse, picked up on the second ring. Kimberly, I thought you were working tonight. Is she okay? Kimberly's voice was low but direct. There was a pause. Yes, she's sleeping now. We had a music session earlier, but, Kim, someone paid the week's bill, not you, right? Kimberly froze. No, who? They wouldn't say. Just that it was private. Said the account was verified. You didn't do it? No, Kimberly said again, more to herself than to Monica. A click echoed in her chest. The last time her mother's care had been coincidentally covered, she'd been halfway across the country. And a burner number had texted her, "Don't ask questions, you're not ready yet." She ended the call, pocketed the phone, and turned back to Miguel. He was watching her, eyes narrowed. Someone paid for your mother? She nodded. It's not the first time. And you never thought to ask who? Not until now. Her tone was sharper than she meant. Don't mistake me for the enemy, Kimberly. I'm not the one who's been following you your entire life. You sure about that? That stopped him. He exhaled, slow and quiet. People like us don't get to have ordinary lives, he said finally. We inherit shadows before we understand what they block. I thought I'd built something clean here, a foundation, a future. Then tonight you walk in wearing a ghost, and I realize how fast it can all go back to blood and smoke. Kimberly crossed her arms, perfume still blooming faintly against her skin. You think I wanted this? No, Miguel said, but I think your grandmother did. The room held its breath. I'm a chemist, Kimberly said, not a spy, not a decoy. I took a job at your club because I needed money, not because I wanted to crack open a dead man's vault. But you're the only one who can. Silence pulsed between them. The low thrum of pressure from the outer walls, the faint hum of electricity in the mirrored panels, it all felt like breath held too long, and Miguel turned toward a concealed shelf, pulled down a leather-bound binder heavy with age. Inside were layouts, blueprints layered with his father's handwritten notes. He laid them on the desk between them. This vault isn't just a room, he said. It's a lockbox of leverage, names, deals, records that could sink or crown an empire. The scent you're wearing, it's the key. Whether you meant to or not, you activated the countdown. Kimberly looked at the schematic, then at her own wrist. Coordinates. A flower. 0217. She paused. That's a time, not just a code, isn't it? He nodded. She stepped closer to the blueprints. Her voice dropped. You keep saying this is about power, your father's death, but it's also about my grandmother, what happened to her. Miguel met her eyes. Yes. And the people outside, she asked? The ones Silvio's handling, they're not just cops. His voice lowered. They're pressure. Someone's trying to flush us out. Force a move. You, me, this vault. Kimberly looked toward the door. Then we make one. For a moment, neither moved. Then Miguel reached into his inner jacket and pulled out a phone. Not his regular one. This one was older, burner style. No biometric ID. He hadn't used it in months. It vibrated in his hand. A single text lit the screen. No contact name, no preview line. He opened it. It was a photo. Kimberly, earlier tonight, entering the club through the staff door. Head down, hair in the tight twist she always wore to control the chaos. She hadn't even seen the camera. Beneath the photo, bring the flower to the root, 0217. The clock is not yours alone. Miguel's jaw set. He turned the phone toward her. Kimberly stared at it, her pulse stuttering. Her skin felt electric, as if the perfume had rewired her nerves. They're watching, she said. They've always been watching, he replied. Then, quieter, now they're ready to move. The lower levels of El Mirador were nothing like the mirrored glamour above. Here, the air thickened. Stone replaced steel. Walls sweated history. Prohibition scars and whispered negotiations soaked into every brick. Kimberly followed Miguel past a chain of secured doors and down a final stairwell, lit only by emergency strips glowing a faint amber. They reached a dead end. To the left, a utility panel with a false hinge. Miguel unlatched it, revealing a keypad nested beside an old wine rack. He swept the rack aside. Behind it, stacked crates marked Marques de Murrieta. But Miguel didn't glance at the labels. He ran his fingers along the floor. There, he muttered, under the 74 Gran Reserva. He and Kimberly knelt beside a wide slab of stone carved with a faint 8-petal engraving, barely visible unless you knew to look. A biometric reader had been embedded into the cement. Miguel pressed his thumb to it. Access denied. He tried again. Access denied. What the hell? He shook his head. It worked 6 months ago. Kimberly reached out, instinct overriding fear. She pulled back her sleeve and pressed the inside of her wrist, still faintly perfumed, to the scanner. The scent had settled into her skin. Warm, stabilized, alive. The panel beeped, then hissed. The stone shifted. Dust spiraled upward. A low groan vibrated through the floor as a square section lifted, revealing a metal-lined shaft and a stairwell that descended into black. Of course, she said softly. Marisol designed it. She would have built the lock for chemistry, not blood. Miguel stared at her wrist, then at the stairs. She built it for you. The vault was colder than the corridor, perfect preservation temperature. Rows of wooden racks curved like ribs around the room, but at the center stood something else. A steel crate bolted to the ground. A single locking mechanism. No visible hinges. Just a recessed square with a faint inscription. When truth decays, distill it. Miguel entered a 4-digit code. The crate hissed and opened like a slow exhale. Inside, a black leather ledger, thick as a fist. Its pages creased with time and names. A glass pendant, shaped like a night-blooming Sirius. Each petal carved to refract light, delicate and deadly in its detail. A thumb drive, silver and unlabeled, except for a single handwritten note taped to its side. For the girl who can smell the truth. Kimberly stepped closer, breath catching. The scent in the room shifted again, her own perfume resonating off the vault's cooler air. Something bloomed beneath it. Memory or warning, she couldn't tell. Miguel opened the ledger first. His breath left him in pieces. Shell companies, he murmured. Accounts routed through Panama, Malta, Dubai. Look at these signatures. Here, this one. That's Silvio's handwriting. Kimberly traced the rows. Every page was a nail in someone's coffin. Transfers, timestamps, laundering routes disguised as charitable foundations. This wasn't a ledger. It was a weapon. She turned to the pendant. It shimmered even in the low light, and when she lifted it, the facets caught the emergency glow strips and scattered the beams across the vault. They flickered, condensed, then focused. On the wall behind them, a constellation of chemical bonds and alphanumeric codes danced like a floating equation. A formula map. Oh, Kimberly whispered. She used the pendant as a projector. Miguel leaned in, examining the pattern. These are distillation sequences, but coded. Look, this bond here. This isn't standard. It's a substitution cipher. Base pairs rewritten as scent components. Kimberly's heart knocked against her ribs. Marisol encoded the master formula as a constellation. And hid it in glass, Miguel said, reverent. She didn't trust paper. Kimberly stared at the floating projection, then at the drive. Her fingers trembled slightly as she inserted it into a portable console nestled into the vault's rear wall. The screen flickered. Then came the voice. If you're seeing this, then I failed. The voice was soft, familiar, a rasp at the edge of memory. Kimberly, my girl. I wore the scent the night Don Arroyo died. I didn't kill him. I tried to save him. I failed. Kimberly's lungs stilled. Silvio Calderon was never loyal. He planned to sell the Arroyo network to foreign buyers, names that don't show up on bank ledgers but leave trails in perfume. I intercepted the ledger before Silvio could vanish it. But I couldn't get Don Arroyo out alive. I'm sorry. I left the evidence somewhere only the nose would look. I left it with you. The screen dimmed. Miguel stepped back from the console like he'd been struck. She knew, he said. She knew it was Silvio. All this time. Kimberly blinked back the sting in her eyes. She was never running away from something. She was running toward tonight. Neither of them spoke for a long moment. Miguel sat on the edge of the open vault crate, staring down at the ledger like it was a body. Kimberly leaned against the wall, pendant clutched in one hand, the last echo of Marisol's voice lingering in the back of her mind. Above them, the club was still beating. Music muted, tension threaded into the air. But here in the belly of the building, it was only cold truth. Then, the lights cut, everything blinked to black. A soft whine. Then, red beams, slicing across the room. Infrared. Kimberly's breath caught. Miguel, he stood instantly, already drawing a slim tactical light from his coat. He clicked it on. 3 red dots tracked across the floor. Motion sensors. Not theirs. Someone's in the building, he said. A 4th beam passed over Kimberly's arm. They're not just coming, she said. They're already here. The vault went dark. Kimberly's vision narrowed. No sound. Just the hum of the vault's backup generator failing. The eerie silence that followed, and the faint mechanical whine of optics warming up. Then, infrared beams crawling across the floor. Miguel moved first, silent and precise, tactical light in one hand, pistol in the other. He positioned himself between Kimberly and the vault entrance. 3 beams swept across the wine racks. A 4th hovered near the back wall, scanning. They weren't searching, they were tracking. Kimberly crouched low, her skin burned with cold adrenaline, her fingers still curled around the pendant, the fractured formula still glinting inside. Miguel, she whispered, that's military-grade infrared. Silvio didn't just bring muscle, he brought science. Footsteps now, measured, heavy boots on stone, and then a voice, rain, smooth, infuriatingly amused. Well, that didn't take long. Rafael Pineda stepped into view just beyond the threshold, flanked by 2 men in matte black. His suit was as sharp as his haircut, his expression cooler than the temperature in the room. His eyes landed on the pendant, still hanging from Kimberly's hand. I knew she'd crack it, he said to no one. I just didn't think she'd wear it into the lion's mouth. You're trespassing, Miguel growled. Rafael barely blinked. It's not trespassing if the locks were bought with my employer's money. Behind him, another set of footsteps, heavier, slower, Silvio. His voice crackled through the club's PA system before he even appeared. Walk away, Miguel. Hand me the girl, the pendant, and the ledger, and you can keep the rest. Keep the crown. Keep the ghosts. Let the past die like it was supposed to. Kimberly stood. No deal. Raphael raised a brow. Bold, chemist, but you're out of time. She scanned the vault, then the ducts. The club had an atmospheric control system. Industrial-grade scent diffusers wired into every floor for ambience control. Don Arroyo's idea. Part paranoia, part genius. Kimberly stepped to a control panel, recessed into the vault wall, half hidden behind a false crate. Miguel, cover me. Always. She yanked the panel open. 4 tubes, oxygen flow, ethanol base, compound injectors, distribution line. Primitive but functional. She grabbed the chemical satchel at her hip, a holdover from her shift, and dumped it. Miniature vials rolled out. Her fingers flew. Peppermint oil, ozone concentrate, trace benzaldehyde. Miguel dropped one of Raphael's men with a single shot. The other dove for cover. You're improvising? Miguel shouted. I'm calculating, she snapped. Peppermint and ozone overstimulate the trigeminal nerve. Bitter almond hits the olfactory bulb. Eye sting, temporary blindness, 0 fatalities. Trust me. Raphael charged toward her. Kimberly slammed the mixture into the injector tube, cranked the ppm to maximum tolerable exposure, and hit diffuse. A hiss swept through the room. Then fog. Not smoke, fog. Cold, synthetic, laced with scent sharp enough to bite. Raphael staggered. What the? He coughed hard, eyes watering instantly. His aim faltered. Miguel advanced fast and brutal, his movements efficient, almost silent. He disarmed Raphael with a sweep and drove him back into the wall. The other mercenary tried to recover, but the fog was thick, disorienting. Kimberly reached for the pendant. Light fractured again, dancing across the fog in a prism of ghostly refraction. She snatched an empty crystal decanter from a shelf, jammed the pendant into the top, held it toward the fog-diffused light. The effect was instant. Chaotic beams, scattered like a kaleidoscope across the vault. The optics couldn't track them anymore. Now, she yelled. Miguel grabbed the ledger. Kimberly grabbed the pendant. The vault door loomed open, but the hallway outside pulsed red. Security overrides tripped. They moved together, weaving through the beams, dodging Raphael's flailing attempt at recovery. Miguel slammed the vault door shut behind them and triggered the auto lock. They sprinted up the service corridor, the fog still chasing them in faint peppermint gusts. Up 2 levels, past storage, past the panic floor's mirrored rooms. Then Miguel stopped dead. Security feeds were still live. Every motion they'd made, every diffuser hack, every assault. And on one of the monitors, Silvio, standing before a line of uniformed police at El Mirador's front entrance, waving them inside. Miguel guided her into the corridor behind the ballroom, his hand just brushing the small of her back. The scent-laced fog still lingered on their clothes, ghosting peppermint through the vents. Kimberly's skin buzzed, not from adrenaline alone, but from the shift. They weren't running anymore, they were being hunted. Where are we? She whispered, glancing at the walls. Panic floor, he said. My father's invention. Mirrors and scent amplifiers, suppressors. He believed surveillance started with the senses. The hallway shimmered. Mirror panels lined both sides, perfectly spaced to multiply reflections. Lights were minimal, just recessed strips above the floor, casting long shadows and the illusion of movement where there was none. He designed this place to confuse intruders? Kimberly asked. Miguel nodded. And test allies. They moved deeper, winding past mirrored doors and narrow junctions. At one intersection, he paused, listened, then pulled her into a side nook, an old maintenance alcove wedged behind a false utility wall. No cameras, no air circulation, no sound. Just them. She exhaled. The silence wasn't empty. It hummed. Miguel turned to her slowly, eyes sweeping across her face, then down her throat, her collarbone, the pulse point where the last of Nocturna 13 had settled. It's different now, he murmured. What is? The scent, the way it's evolved. He stepped closer. It's stabilized, fully bloomed. This isn't just perfume anymore. It's memory, heat, pressure, body chemistry. He stopped inches from her. Not touching. Just close enough for the static to crackle. It was a signal, he said. Now it's a signature. Kimberly swallowed. Her heart was tripping into strange rhythms. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen," she whispered. "I know." He hesitated, then gently brushed his knuckles against her wrist. The motion was scientific, tender, reverent, like he was reading her through contact. For a moment, everything outside, the vault, the police, the betrayal, held still. Then, footsteps. Miguel tensed. Kimberly felt it before she heard it. The shift in the air, the weight of someone moving too confidently for someone who shouldn't be here. He turned toward the corridor. "I'll check it. Stay here." "Miguel." But he was already gone, slipping back into the mirrored labyrinth without a sound. She waited 30 seconds, 40. Her pulse ticked out seconds like a metronome. Then a voice, smiling, quiet, familiar. "He leaves you alone already?" Rafael Pineda stepped into view, clean suit, no weapon, no visible urgency. Just that same effortless charm, the kind that made people believe danger was an exaggeration. He leaned against the mirror like it was a friend. "Thought you might want to hear a counteroffer," he said. "I don't remember asking." "You didn't, but you're smart. Smart people don't ignore their options." Kimberly didn't move. "Say what you came to say." Raphael gestured lazily. "You've done something incredible. Decoded Marisol's work, found the pendant, opened a vault no one's accessed in decades. And what does Miguel offer you? A lab? Under his umbrella? A leash dressed up as legacy?" She narrowed her eyes. He kept going. "You don't need to be protected, Kimberly. You need to be published. You're not a footnote in the Arroyo myth. You're the whole new chapter. Come work with me. I'm building something independent, boutique, global distribution, full control. No thrones, no secrets, just science." She stepped forward, slow and deliberate. "You talk like a chemist, but I've met your kind before. You don't want formulas, you want leverage." Raphael's smile thinned. "We all want leverage. You're just pretending you don't." She looked at her reflection, dozens of versions of herself staring back. And then she saw it. His angle. Not charm, not opportunity, division. "Elavio sent you in here to separate me from the ledger," she said. "If you can't get the pendant, you'll try to split us." Raphael didn't deny it. "I'll find you again," he said, stepping back, "when you realize you're too big to fit under someone else's legacy." He disappeared into the mirror maze like a vapor trail. A soft click in the wall to her left. Kimberly turned, every muscle taut. But it was Enid, Miguel's lieutenant, sharp in her dark jacket, tablet in hand, hair pulled back in a no-nonsense braid. "You all right?" Inez asked. Kimberly nodded, breath shaky. "He didn't touch me, just talked." Inez's tone stayed clipped. "Talk can be a weapon." She handed Kimberly a comm piece. "We're guiding you both to the main floor through the private corridor, but the front's compromised." Kimberly followed Inez through a pivot panel. Behind it, a narrow passage lit only by red strips beneath mirrored grates. Their footsteps barely made sound. They ascended through the service ramp to a hidden mezzanine that overlooked the main lounge. Kimberly froze. Below, the chandeliers glittered dimly. Music was dead. The dance floor sat in eerie stillness. And at the center of it all, Silvio Calderon, suit scuffed, left hand bandaged, flanked by uniformed officers. He was bleeding, but smiling. "I hate that smile," Inez muttered. Kimberly's throat tightened. Miguel stepped onto the mezzanine from the opposite side, catching sight of them. Inez nodded once and vanished down the side route. Then Silvio looked up, right at them. His voice carried through the empty room like poison in silk. "We're here to secure evidence." El Mirador had never been this quiet. The chandeliers, still dimmed from the lockdown, scattered soft constellations across the mirrored walls, stars caught in cut glass. The club's usual thrum of bodies, music, and power was gone, replaced by the hush that follows something sacred or ruined. At the center of the room stood Miguel. His suit was torn at the shoulder. His knuckles were bruised. His posture was diamond cut, steady, unflinching. In one hand, he held the ledger. black leather, thick and unignorable. Silvio stood across from him at the bar, a bandage wrapped around his palm, uniformed officers flanking him like uncertain shadows. He wore the smile of a man betting on chaos. "Really, Miguel," he said, voice low and performative, "you want to resolve this with paperwork?" Miguel didn't reply. He placed the ledger gently on the bar top, as if it were a relic, not a weapon. Then he opened it. The officers leaned in. Each page bore names, signatures, shell corporations, routing paths through El Mirador's foundation, paper trails that led not to Miguel's family, but to Silvio's offshore accounts, real estate deeds, trafficking manifests, silent equity contracts. El Mirador's ownership was a mask, and Silvio had written it. He flipped it to the page that wired the building itself to a trust registered in Liechtenstein. The beneficiary? Quiro Marinas, Silvio's pseudonym on 3 separate deals. "You forged my father's signature," Miguel said calmly, "then buried the evidence beneath the club you never thought I'd search." Silvio scoffed. "You expect them to believe that?" Kimberly stepped forward from the mezzanine. "I don't expect them to believe you," she said. "I expect them to see the science." She pulled the glass pendant from beneath her coat and held it up to the chandelier light. It refracted into a spray of violet fire, tiny focused beams that spread across the room. The light struck the mirrored walls. Formulas flared to life, chemical strings woven into dates, transaction amounts, GPS coordinates. Marisol's code turned public. The officers turned in slow circles, watching the numbers flicker across glass and steel. "Hell is math," one of them muttered. Kimberly pointed to a sequence repeating on all 4 walls. 714 RAM USD, SC, R. One of the officers frowned. "SC? Silvio Calderon," Miguel answered. And before anyone could ask, Rafael Pineda stepped forward. Too fast. "That was for the offshore lab. He told me it was clean." Everyone turned. Miguel's eyes narrowed. "How do you know that's the July transfer?" Rafael froze. He hadn't said the date. The timestamp wasn't labeled. Only someone involved would have known. Silvio turned to him, expression a perfect study in disdain. "You idiot!" The room held its breath. Miguel didn't. He reached into his coat and pulled out the thumb drive labeled in Marisol's script. Walked it calmly to the main console at the bar. Plugged it in. A beat of static. Then her voice, low and tired, filled the room. "If you're hearing this, I didn't make it. Silvio Calderon was never family. He planned the betrayal, sold names, roots I built for the old man's empire. I stole the ledger to stop the sale. I wore the scent as a cover. I failed. The girl, my granddaughter, she'll finish it. The evidence is sealed beneath the club. You'll find it with her." Miguel unplugged the drive. No flourish, no speech. Silvio's smile shattered. He lunged across the bar. Miguel caught him mid-motion and dropped him with one clean punch. No drama, just gravity. Silvio hit the floor, hard. The officers closed in instantly, cuffing him as he spat blood and half a laugh. "You think this ends here?" he hissed. "This was never about the club." Miguel stepped back, adjusting his jacket like the moment hadn't rattled him. "It is now," he said. A red light blinked above the main entrance. The system had been recording since Silvio opened his mouth. Kimberly could already picture the playback. The confession, the punch, the evidence bathed in starlight. Inez moved through the crowd like a quiet blade, directing officers to secure statements, tag evidence, confirm chain of custody. The building exhaled. The silence after a coup doesn't feel like peace. It feels like a space that hasn't decided what it's going to become yet. Outside, the crowd that had been boxed out by the lockdown began to trickle back toward the velvet rope. Their faces were half-lit in blue from police flashers. Word was spreading. Something had happened inside El Mirador. Something big. Kimberly stood by the bar, glass pendant still in her palm, formula still dancing faintly in the mirrors. Miguel came to her quietly. "They'll want statements, footage, a dozen explanations for things we can't say." She nodded. "I'll give them what I can." A pause. The chandeliers shimmered overhead. Miguel looked past the wreckage of the last hour, past the officers, past the broken man being led away in cuffs, then back to her. His voice was quieter now, stripped of command. Now we talk about you. El Mirador had begun to breathe again. The officers were gone, Ines somewhere in the wings organizing cleanup, and Silvio, bleeding, cuffed, silenced, had finally been escorted into a cruiser. The security feed looped on standby. Outside, the city reawakened. But inside the club, time slowed. The doors were still locked. And in the center of the floor, beneath chandeliers that had reflected chaos, confession, and code, Kimberly stood alone. Miguel approached her without the weight of his title. No guards, no entourage, just him. Shirt open at the throat, jacket torn at the cuff, blood drying on his knuckles. The air between them still carried traces of Nocturna 13, but softened now, more memory than warning. I've seen that room filled with 600 people, he said quietly. Tonight, this is the only version of it I'll remember. She didn't speak. I cleared the floor because I recognized the perfume, Miguel continued. But I didn't keep you here because of scent. He stopped 5 feet from her, gave her space, gave her the choice. I kept you here, he said, because in that moment, I saw the future. Kimberly turned toward him, half-shadowed in the crystal light. You didn't even know my name. I knew the way you moved, like someone used to being watched, used to being followed, but not used to being seen. That landed, quiet and hard. She exhaled. Miguel reached into his coat, carefully, no sudden movement, and pulled out the glass pendant. It had been cleaned, reset in a fine, simple chain. Its shape caught the overhead light and refracted it into soft galaxies across his palms. He held it out. It's not a collar, he said. It's a key. Kimberly looked down at it. The flower, carved into crystal. Marisol's final design. A formula written in light and trust. What are you offering me? She asked. Miguel didn't blink. Full funding. The Arroyo Foundation's research wing. A legitimate lab, registered, licensed, clean. You decide what gets made, what gets published, your name on the door. Third-party oversight for all books and budgets. Quarterly audits. Total transparency. She laughed once, sharp. That's a hell of a pitch. It's not a pitch. It's a place where no one can use you without your permission. Kimberly's smile faded. You say protection, but sometimes that's just a prettier word for leash. Miguel nodded. I know. That's why I won't be the one watching the books. You pick the accountant, the oversight. You write the rules. A pause. You get safety, but never silence. Her breath hitched, caught between caution and something warmer. She stepped closer. The distance between them narrowed, the static thickened. You don't even like science, she murmured. No, he said, eyes locked on hers. But I like what you do with it. He lifted the pendant gently, slipped the chain around her neck. His hands didn't tremble, but they didn't rush either. The pendant settled just above the hollow of her throat. The formula glinted like a constellation. Miguel studied her face as if scent were a language and she was speaking fluently. You know what attraction smells like, Kimberly? He asked softly. She raised an eyebrow. You tell me. It's not flowers, not sugar or musk. It's hydrogen and heat. Ion exchange. Trace sweat when someone steps too close. It's chemistry when you don't want it, when you're trying not to want it. A quiet passed. The room dimmed further. The outside world held its breath. Then Kimberly spoke. If I say yes, it's not to protection, it's to the work. Miguel nodded. And if you say no, then you unlock the doors, and we walk away. His jaw flexed, but he didn't argue. Didn't reach for her again. That silence meant everything. Kimberly touched the pendant, still warm from his hands. Give me until sunrise. Dawn came soft and gold over the city, casting long reflections in the hospital's glass windows. Kimberly stood at the foot of her mother's bed, the morning news murmuring from the mounted television. El Mirador was everywhere. Still images of chandeliers, police lights, and Silvio Calderon being led into custody with a torn sleeve and a swollen jaw. Her mother stirred. Kimberly turned down the volume and stepped closer. Mom? Catherine's eyes blinked open, slow, searching, but she focused, just enough. "You were on TV," she said, voice groggy but amused. "I didn't know you were famous." Kimberly smiled. "I'm not. I just walked into the right explosion." She reached into her coat and pulled out the drive. Marisol's voice was still on it. Kimberly loaded it into her laptop, cued the audio, and set the speaker close. Her mother's fingers twitched at the edge of the blanket, like they used to when she was sewing, before the tremors. The voice came through, low and grainy, but undeniable. "Kimberly, my girl. I wore the scent the night Don Arroyo died. I didn't kill him. I tried to save him. I failed, but the proof, everything you need, it's with you now. Your life wasn't random. It was a perimeter, a design, built by people who knew you'd be the one to finish this. You were never running. You were being guided." Catherine's lips parted. A faint sound escaped, half a breath, half a name. "She left this for me," Kimberly said softly. "All of it. The formula, the codes, the vault. She didn't disappear. She made a choice." Catherine blinked again. This time, her hand found Kimberly's wrist. "You did good," she said. And Kimberly, who'd spent years believing in molecules instead of omens, felt the world shift. Miguel waited outside. He didn't text, didn't call, just stood leaning against a black SUV in a blue-gray suit and no tie, coat folded neatly over his arm. He looked like someone who could command a room or leave it quiet if that's what it needed. When Kimberly stepped through the hospital's front doors, he didn't move. That was the difference. He waited. No pressure, no assumption, just presence. She walked to him without speaking. The pendant lay warm against her throat, catching the sun and scattering fractured constellations across the concrete. "Everything okay?" he asked. "Getting there." He nodded. "Did you sleep?" she asked. "No." She smiled. "Me neither." They stood in the quiet a moment longer. Then she said, "Take me back." El Mirador had been scrubbed clean. The blood, the fog, the tension, gone, replaced by glass, polished back to starlight, and furniture returned to their exact positions like nothing had ever happened. But the air remembered. When Kimberly stepped inside, the staff stilled. A few of the bartenders exchanged looks. One of the security guards gave a single, respectful nod. Then Inez appeared at the far end of the floor. She studied Kimberly for 2 full seconds, as if scanning for doubt. Then she nodded too. It wasn't permission, it was acknowledgement. Miguel led her to the center of the floor, to the exact spot where she'd stood when he first said, "Everyone, out!" The pendant still hung around her neck. He didn't reach for it. Didn't move too close. Just waited again. Kimberly exhaled. "I'm in," she said. He didn't smile yet. He waited for the fine print. "I want the lab. I want control. I want quarterly audits, third-party oversight, and a board I help build. My own security, full ownership of my work." "Done," he said. "I'll use the Arroyo name, but it won't use me." "Agreed. And I'm not your experiment, your asset, or your secret." "You're none of those," he said. "You're the reason any of this means something." Finally, she smiled. He did too. It wasn't romantic yet. It wasn't about heat or hunger. It was respect, shared gravity. Kimberly reached for the pendant and lifted it gently. The chandelier light caught it just right, sending fractals across the glass walls. No longer sharp, no longer coated. Just beautiful. The scent at her throat wasn't warning anymore. It was a signature. Somewhere behind them, the club's main doors clicked, and for the first time since the night detonated, they unlocked.
Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.